Since the inception of this country, the United States has maintained a Department of Defense dedicated to protecting the ideals of democracy. Yet with human casualties of war in the millions and the drain on our nation's economy in the trillions of dollars, there's one group of patriot activists who believe there's a better way.
The Department of Peace is actually a national grassroots movement, believe it or not. There's actual legislation in the Congress right now today to establish a structure within the U.S. government at the cabinet level that would be known as the Department of Peace and Nonviolence. Its purpose fundamentally would be to reduce and prevent violence by applying nonviolent conflict resolution principles so that we're actually resolving conflict before it erupts into violence. Most people don't realize that it is an extremely expensive thing to deal with violence after it's occurred rather than to prevent it.
Right.
So the World Health Organization estimates that in the U.S. we spend $300 billion a year just on the after effects of violence in our country, not including anything related to war. So when we look at especially what's happening with the economy today, and the real uncertainty around health care, around Social Security, what's happening with the banking systems, where's the money going to come from? When you look at the fact that if we actually mastered the ability to nonviolently resolve conflict before it erupted into violence, we would have literally billions of dollars at our disposal.
Like many Americans, peace is personal for Wendy, who lost an uncle in Vietnam.
There's just so many. I feel a little selfish just looking at him. My sister came some years ago and asked where to find his name, and they asked her, who, and she said Bruce Green, and they said, which one?
And this is obviously an emotional place for you, an emotional time for you. What would you say to people that say that peace isn't patriotic? People that have lost ones, relatives, friends in the Iraq War, in Vietnam, and all the wars that have happened since that and before then, who say, well, peace is not patriotic, we need to support our troops. What would you say to people like that?
I think there's a tremendous misconception that they're somehow mutually exclusive, that we can't apply nonviolent conflict resolution capabilities and actually be supporting our troops as well. It's the same thing. It is very personal work for me. My father was a career Air Force officer. He also served in Vietnam, as did his other brother. They both luckily came back. My grandfather was a major general in the Air Force. My brother's an active duty colonel. I have a cousin who's a Marine captain. They've both been to Iraq. They've both come back.
The Peace Alliance offers an alternative approach to conflict resolution.
It's not about protest, it's not about blame, it's not about guilt, it's not even about being angry, although certainly we recognize the passion that's under a lot of people's anger, and that it comes from that deep desire to be having things be different and really be expressing who we are. When we look at men and women in the military, when we look at the police, people forget they're actually peace officers. And the question is, how can we expand our skills so we have more tools in the toolbox so we know which tool to use when? There are a variety of tools that are needed. Diplomacy, development, actually investing funds to address the root causes of violence in other nations, and defense, and new skills and new capabilities. They actually teach nonviolent conflict resolution courses at the National War College. It's not necessarily an either-or proposition. People misconstrue that there's some sort of limited way in which you can serve your country, but there's infinite possibility. We're really working to give our troops the tools they need, to give our police the tools they need, to give ourselves the tools we need to create a world that's not a utopia, but simply has significantly less violence than what we have today. Nobody goes through what you have to go through to get elected to office and says, I'm going to go to Washington and screw things up. The people who work here in DC, they're amazing people, intelligent, committed, compassionate, and they've lost their way. And so it's for us as citizens to recognize this is our job. We can no longer just say, well, we elected you, you guys go take care of it. We have to be part of the solution, or else we're part of the problem.